Do I need
So
to
we're
be
gonna have two
recording?
versions of this.
We're gonna have the live version and then the podcast version, which I'll do some light editing on for
Light
listenability.
editing. I've got
I
a
think-
cough. I'll tell
They'll be
you when
on
to
in like
know.
6 months.
I think we've always done that, right? We've always had, yeah. Tune in a year and a half for this episode.
Yeah.
It's called the Waste of Books, guys.
Dan, how's your recording shit?
It's fine, I believe.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, sweet. I'm just booting mine real quick.
Are we recording? Oh, so you haven't started yet.
No, I've been working on our tech issues.
Mm.
Created by ourselves.
Right, our own problems.
Well, hold on. Burp, 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 burp. Okay, buddy, ready to start recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Recording.
1, 2, 3, recording.
Recording.
Yeah.
Recording.
Everybody reading their sound waves on there? Got a decent level? Everything?
Yeah.
From what I know of these things, it
Just
seems
make
to
sure
be
you can
okay.
see sound waves on there. That's all.
There are what appears to be waves.
I
Yeah,
love
I'm
reading
seeing
sound waves.
Cool. Well, shit. Should we do it?
Nope, hold on.
Let's fucking
Fuck.
do it, B.
I'm gonna go grab a beer.
Good
Oh,
idea.
Jesus. Should we do it? Oh, wait.
Editor, please note that cough.
We should feel like an engineer to record all of our mistakes.
Yeah.
It's great.
Engineer Phil, make a marking there. That's a fast edit.
Well, shit. Should we do it?
Back in the
Yeah.
studio again, boys.
I
So-
know, this feels good.
There's a new sheriff in town, sort of with this one. I was talking to Cooper beforehand. I was going on a date right before this, so I didn't actually finish the book.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so, and I know that's really lame on one level.
How far did you get?
I got like 80 pages or so.
80
Definitely
pages
should have
left
finished
or
it.
80 pages in?
I read
Wait,
80.
hold on.
Yes, is that Jordan laughing? Yes.
What the fuck? You
That's
read
great.
80 pages, Phil?
Yes,
80?
shut up.
You
Yes.
fuck face.
Well, I see where pussy lies on your scale of values here relative to the bros.
Or penis. We don't discriminate on the
But-
podcast.
You don't know who I was going on a date with.
Yeah.
I'm
All
on.
right, sure. Sure.
It could be a potted cactus.
But no, this actually might benefit us in the long run. It's
Yeah,
like-
Cooper, can you help me out here?
Yeah,
I
so
I just finished it today.
Good man.
That's perfect. I think the benefit that we can take advantage of having 5 hosts is if sometimes one of us doesn't finish the book, we have 4 other people here to help them along, and it actually might make it more listenable because that person might be able to act as a surrogate for the audience.
Fair enough.
You know, keeping us on track and being able to have somebody who may need to ask questions or have us backtrack if they're not getting it because they've never read the book.
Sure. We should nominate someone to not finish the book every time.
Well, I was thinking that as long as that all of us aren't making a habit of it, it would be fine, right?
Right. We don't want to ever rely on this as a
Yeah.
crutch. So it might either mean if this is something we want to do, again, we can like rotate who doesn't read the book, depending on each of our schedules. Because obviously we've seen that sometimes it's hard for us to finish the book. We fucking live busy
And
lives.
we're trying to get on a little bit more frequent recording schedule. So if we're maybe more flexible about things in this way, where like one person can be like, yo guys, shit's kind of crazy. I'm just going to sit in on this one and like see what I can contribute without like obviously disrupting things that you don't know what you're talking about, right? Like you have no place arguing about plot in this conversation if you haven't read the book. But if you have something that strikes you as like a thematic point, then you could speak to that or ask questions about stuff, you know. But yeah, I'm kind of serious about wanting to do this every few weeks or whatever. So if this will help us, I thought that we could all kind of benefit from it at one point or another.
We should just pre-schedule like 3 or 4 books.
Yeah, we'll do that and maybe put
That's
out
a
the
good
role,
idea.
like
Yeah.
be leading conversations and who's going to be kind of laying back or whatever.
Yeah, we can have like a Google Docs where we can record the books and then decide who won't be able to make it or who won't be able to read the book. We should always with this, it might be able to have it so that we all can make it for the recording. Though scheduling a good time to record is always going to be difficult. But at the very least, somebody can not have the added weight of also finishing a book.
Right.
And it might enhance the podcast. You know, having somebody represent the audience might make it a little bit easier for us to be on track. It's like where my mind went when we were talking about this.
Totally.
Phil, you were just at the tip of the iceberg on this book.
Right. I am going to continually reference the fact that you did not finish the book.
That's fine.
Yep. No, I think we should also take the opportunity that maybe it's a risk because we're just going to roast the shit out of that person.
Right. It will always be a pain in the ass.
Or like if that person asks really stupid questions, it can be like, well, if you fucking did your job and read the book, you might have a better idea when ask such stupid questions.
I think that'll make for a good entertainment value all around.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Sure.
This podcast definitely needs that.
This podcast is brought to you by Phil's inability to schedule time to read.
Shut up.
Well, we'll take what we can get.
Yeah.
All right, should we start then?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Intros, I guess. This is Eric.
While I'm thinking of it, I'm sorry. Can you guys make sure that your headphones aren't so loud that your microphone is picking up our other voices? That has happened in the past and it kind of sucks.
Let me check the levels of said waves.
Yeah, it would be something like your headphones, Dan, where you don't really have like mine are earbuds where they plug into my ear and the sound gets like suctioned in there.
I've upgraded to new headphones.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they came with the iPhone 8.
Wow.
Earbuds, I believe they are sufficient to these purposes. For these purposes. Yes.
New sponsor. iPhone.
Right, yeah. Thanks, Apple.
No. It's just Steve Jobs.
We're just sponsored by Steve Jobs' estate.
Yep.
Editor, take note.
Mark that.
Mark it. Got it. Okay. All right. Let's get into it. We don't have that much time. Looks like Jordan's bored. Hi, Jordan.
Hey.
Hi, Jordan.
I'm not bored. I have to finish something after this and teach it like early in the morning.
Totally.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
All right.
Just truck along as comfortably.
Great. Did you read it, Jordan?
I did. It was 6 weeks ago.
I'm in the same boat, man. I'm in the exact. I was like trying to tally how long ago I read it, and I was like, wow, it feels like 2.5 years ago that I read this book.
Yeah, it might be 2 months. I think we picked this book 3 months ago.
I think so.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's true.
Yeah, so we need to get a lot more of a schedule there.
That's okay.
It's been a busy summer / winter and fall. All right, I'm Cooper Malin out here in Dixon, Montana.
And this is Bill in Billings, Montana.
Gotcha. This is Eric in Eugene, Oregon.
This is Jordan Finn in Brooklyn, New York.
Fuck. This is Dan in Bangkok.
Oh, it's so good to be back with you guys.
Hello.
Yes, likewise.
So Dan, this was your
no
choice.
other human being since till right now, since our last recording.
Editor, note that. This book was my choice. I don't remember how I found out about it. It could have been Phil, if you'll remember the aesthetics class we took in university. There was so many references to like different works of art. I don't know if it came from somewhere around there. I also took an intercultural communications class where we took the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis as like basically one of the fundamental tenets of our course, like one of the things we just accepted as given.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, also I really think I discovered it on just black holing Wikipedia frenzies, right? And I remember So I found the book. It was like, oh, it's related to Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Cool. And then I clicked on the author link, Samuel R. Delaney, who is a I want to use my words very carefully here. He is a overweight homosexual African American science fiction writer. Right. Which I thought that is a unique and interesting voice to have in the science fiction canon at that time, since most of the writers were white males. And the stuff on his Wikipedia just kind of got better and better. So let's see what do I have. You have written here. So yeah, born in 1942, raised in Brooklyn. Wrote his first book at 20. He's been writing ever since. In his later career, he's been writing nonfiction and literary criticism about sci-fi. Let's see here. He wrote 2 episodes of the Wonder Woman comics, which is strange, during a controversial moment in the character's history when she gives up being a superhero and becomes a secret agent, which I know nothing about.
That's all right, Dan. You don't have to protect yourself.
Sure. Well, so, and then he's got some weird sexual themes going on. So, what here, this is exactly from the Wikipedia. So, he wrote a bunch of books between 62 and 68, 8 novels and a novella, culminating in Babel-17 and the Einstein Connection. And then at some point, it says on Wikipedia, it was at this point he began dealing with sexual themes to an extent rarely equaled in serious writing. What else? Oh, he's got books called The Tides of Lust, a title he doesn't endorse. The Madman, Hog, and Phallos can all be considered pornography, a label which Delaney himself endorses. Let's see. Oh, so he has commented that he believes to omit the sexual practices he portrays in his writing would limit the dialogue children and adults can have about it themselves, and that this lack of knowledge can kill people. Yeah, it just seemed like a really interesting dude. I know he had a wife at one point, but then he started living with a homeless man, like having an open relationship with a homeless man. I think he's been that way for a long time. So just all these kind of random things on Wikipedia, I was like, dude, this guy's got to be fucking interesting. Like someone like this has to have like a interesting perspective, I guess. Totally.
And he does. I mean, this book is interesting to say the least. I actually have written up just sort of a small synopsis. Not quite. I just tried to write something that might entice the listeners. So Samuel R. Delaney's 1966 sci-fi classic Babel-17 is an intergalactic adventure set in the far future of humankind in which all corners of the galaxy have been inhabited. An intergalactic war has seen the development of a language, Babel-17, that the invaders, the faceless other in the war, use to sabotage key strategic sites and assassinate important members of the war effort. Rydra Wong, a cryptographer, linguist, poet, is assigned to the job of cracking the code. It is while attempting to decipher this mystery that Rydra and her crew discover that there is a traitor within their midst. It was nominated for the 1967 Hugo Award for Best Novel, and it tied Flowers for Algernon for the Nebula Award of the same year. Babel-17 is a sci-fi look at language and what it means to the human mind.
Boom.
Nailed it. Very good.
So that, I mean, have any of you guys, to go off a bit of a tangent, have you guys ever read Flowers for Algernon?
You know, no. That book, that seems like something I read like 15 years ago or something.
Yeah, we read it as part of the public school curriculum, I'm pretty sure.
That's what I thought.
In those weird literature books, the like kind of hefty ones, like just full of little excerpts. I remember like they had pictures of the movie. And, like little snippets of it. I remember the pictures.
It's good. It's interesting.
Is it about somebody with madness or something?
No, well, it's about somebody who has like limited mental capabilities, like super low IQ, and these scientists, I believe they give him pills to make him smarter, and it's his diary that he writes going through this procedure. Algernon is the mouse in the story that they test the drugs on, and so the pills work. He becomes insanely brilliant, and then there's like a half-life to the pills, and so it's also the story of how the pills stop working and he loses these mental capacities. Super good, well worth the read. I think it's a little I think it's really interesting actually that it tied for the Hugo Award, or no, sorry, for the Nebula Award with this book, because they both kind of deal with themes that I think were really hitting sci-fi hard in the 1960s. Language, this new burgeoning like science and what it means.
I've noticed
you also have like stuff like civil rights going on and shit like that.
I definitely noticed this was like more like hard sci-fi, like talking about mathematics and like the mathematics of language even than like Dune was, where they weren't like considered, they weren't worried or about stuff like how rockets and, you know, degrees and angles and, you know, like all the stuff that Rydra always talks about.
Yeah, I wonder, because I think it appears more hard sci-fi than it really is.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely.
Because it feels like Delaney's using math as just a form, like as a style of dialogue, like you said, like Rydra is using these or just like saying these equations out. I don't know if they would ever actually work. I mean, I'm sure. Right. But that is an interesting point, because this is definitely harder of a sci-fi than our other sci-fi book Dune was, for sure.
Yeah, and I remember us just like talking about the difference last time. And, discussing how, like I felt like Dune was much more intricate in the world building, and then this was kind of trying to juggle a little bit of like world building, but trying to be kind of scientific on the surface to make it, you know, seem very, you know, make the characters seem like really believable in their like scientific prowess.
Well, the characters are definitely a huge part of the story, because I would argue that there almost is no world building in this. We are just led to believe or just understand that almost every arm in the known galactic space is inhabited by humans. You know, we've reached this level of civilization. Yeah. But, you know, we see very little of very few worlds. There's a few worlds and stuff that we get to see. But it's actually it's pretty specific to Rydra Wong and her crew.
Mm-hmm.
There's I don't know what you guys thought. I thought there's a big emphasis on food, which is kind of strange. Like he's always talking about like there's like mentioning different dishes and shit. Like, oh, care for some chicken, Captain, or like
right.
And she's always talking to the young cook about like what was going to be for dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, before what did you guys think of Rydra Wong as our protagonist?
Well, really quick, I want to enter some historical background information here. I guess Rydra was actually based off of his ex-wife, and all of the poetry, you know, like in the chapter heads, they're all poet. You know, it's all assumed to be Rydra Wong's poetry. Mm-hmm. Samuel Delaney didn't write any of that. That's his wife's poetry.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
and that is a huge part of the book. I guess not huge. It is a part of it where it is beautiful poetry that lends itself to the story a bit.
Yeah, and so really quick. So one thing about Rydra's life is that she was part of a triple, which we should certainly talk about later. Which is in the future they have it's a sexual union between three people, like a 3-person relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And the two people she was with, there was a guy named Phobo and a guy named Mules, like Arelnahide or something. Mm-hmm. And if you take the letters of Mules and Arelnahide or whatever, it's actually Samuel R. Delaney.
What is that? An anagram?
And the funniest thing is there's a point in the book where she tells that to someone. She's like, I was tripled with Mules, Arelnahide, whatever the fuck. And he's like, no shit, the guy who wrote Empire Star, and Empire Star is another book by Samuel R. Delaney.
Right. My version has Empire Star in it.
Yeah, that's how Samuel Delaney wanted it to be published as like both together. Like you'd have two books together.
Is it in the same universe?
I do not know that. I would like to find out.
That would make that's very, because Samuel R. Delaney wrote Empire Star, but in the universe of Babel-17. What do you say, Mules
something?
Whoever wrote that, but then they're published together in the same book.
But
that's
they talk about it, and like apparently, like in the world, the Empire Star written by Mules is based on an adventure they went on.
And
on a ship.
in real life at this time, he had with his wife, they had another man, I believe, So he was doing a triple. What he's talking about, this tripling, he was doing it in real life with his wife.
I can't wait to get to a point in my writing that I'm able to have a book published, and in the second book, I reference that book and have other characters talk about how amazing my first book is.
You say that right or wrong at one point says, "Never do a triple with two men. Next time I'll do it with a woman." There's a piece of dialogue that she says in there.
Right. The tripling's interesting. I just meant too in the context. And Dan, you touched on this a little bit, but this book was written in 1966. It is sci-fi, which historically, and especially at that point in time, was just kind of an old white man's game. It was old white men writing for a predominantly young white male audience. And so here, and we talked about Samuel's own life a bit, but Raidra Wong is a Chinese or an Asian female, an Asian woman, who is like super intelligent, super capable physically, and she's like an incredibly smart and capable character who has the males around her do what she wants, and is not just the love or whatever you want to call that she falls in love with one of the characters in the book is sort of like a byproduct of her learning the language. So it's not like a huge integral part of the story, which I feel like you see a lot of the times in older sci-fi books where there happens to be a female protagonist. A lot of the story is driven by her relationship with another male in the story.
Yeah, it was more like she was in love with the language, and that was the love story.
And I thought about how it's kind of like when we read Dune, we said like Paul is kind of like, he's like the man bred for the job, right? Like he's kind of like the perfect dude. And it was like with Raidra, she seemed with her language and abilities and her, status as a poet, like her poetry is famous across the 5 galaxies that humans have colonized at this point. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like if you like looking at her past, right? Like her father was a communications engineer, and her mother was a translator. She said she knew like 7 Earth languages by the time she was like 12 or something. Mm-hmm. So it really did seem like she's like the one for the job.
And she's only like 26 or something. It said.
Yeah, and she's already retired from the military.
Yeah, and like is like everyone recognizes her when they see her. They're like, "Oh, Captain Wong."
Yeah.
Right, because we're also led to believe in that very early on in the book that, like you said, Dan, she is incredibly famous for her poetry, and everybody this side of the war knows it. And in fact, she's so famous and so talented of a writer that even the invaders, the enemies of this war, also read and love her poetry.
Right, because she always talks about being popular on both sides of the axis or whatever. Is that how
totally, and also a huge part of her character, and it's something we don't learn till later, is that she's telepathic.
Right, and that's hinted at because in the beginning, it's like the way it's described, it's like she's just reading muscle movements or something.
That's how right. It's her, and I think the narrator trying to add logic to this before the big reveal, obviously, where she's trying to tell herself that she's obviously not telepathic, which is something that her therapist has hinted at. But it could be another extension of her linguistic ability. I think it might be like Delaney's way of further enhancing our understanding of this character's ability to understand language, until it's obviously revealed that she's telepathic, which just helps her as just being another badass character. But I also feel like if we want to get into the plot before our character diagnoses, I just want to add that I felt like this tactic was a bit of a crutch, in that she could get herself out of problems because she was telepathic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if we want, we should probably go through and just start dissecting this book. Like,
hey, guys, the guy who didn't read this, what do you think?
Of the book?
Of what we said. Do you agree with everything?
Everything sounds great, you guys.
Well, the beginning of this book sounds off like it comes off in 2 genres for me. Mm-hmm. It comes off as like a hard-boiled noir, like almost like a detective story. You know, our first perspective into the story is this hardened, like battle-hardened general who has to come into a swanky bar and approach the Rydra Wong and try to convince her to join the war efforts. And then it just kind of goes along the same vein as like a swashbuckling tale right off the bat. In my ideas, you know, he recruits her. She talks to her therapist. We're introduced to that character, and then for the first half, or for the first part of the book, it's her like recruiting her crew, which is very fun because a big part of this book are the characters that Delaney creates in who needs to pilot a ship. And that's why it kept reminding me of like Treasure Island and like all those other classic pirate stories, because a lot of it is just about the crew, you know, and how each of the crew is an important member of the ship, and what each of their jobs entail is and it's sci-fi, so it's super fun and interesting, and I think he takes it in a really imaginative way that I don't think I've seen before.
Yeah. And another thing, there's actually some class issues brought up, right? They're always talking about transport and customs.
Oh, right.
Right, and like the people in transport are like lower class. Those are the people on the spaceships, like shuttling cargo. And the customs officers, I think they just like receive it, and they're like considered the higher class, or you know, more professional individuals. So, and there's a guy, Daniel Appleby, I believe, that follows Rydra around.
Right, he's like supposed to be like the reader's way into this world.
Right, and he thinks it's also strange.
Dan, I think I'm glad thank you for helping me out. I don't know if it was just me, but for some reason I had a tough time understanding transport and customs. I even forgot about it.
Well, he never explains it. It's all just kind of referenced.
Right,
like,
you're right.
You damn customs people.
Right, it's implied. So the transport people would be the lower class because they're the ones who are doing the shipping.
Yeah, and they're the ones that have all the cosmetic surgery. So this scene is really cool. Where you're right, Coop. Where the scene where she gathers the crew is really, really cool because
it's awesome.
She takes this customs officer around to this bar where they like have to get naked.
Red light district and shit.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And he's just confused the whole time, and he's kind of like freaked out and like, what? These people have fins and shit. Like, what's going on?
Well, I mean, we can go even deeper into it. So yeah, like you said, they have to like get naked or remove some articles of clothing or something. I think it's just a whole like fish out of water thing, just making the reader. And what's that homie customs dude's name?
Daniel Appleby.
Yeah, because he comes back. He's like a spunky like Johnny Be Good type, you know, just trying to uphold the rules and whatnot. Like he keeps saying like, "Ooh, I've only ever heard of this district. I've never actually been inside of it."
Right.
So we have to get the captain first. So the first thing Rydra has to do is enlist a captain. And to understand relationships, this Appleby character is a customs agent who has to sign off on a ship's crew. So a captain like Wong in this instance has to get a customs agent to and I think it even says like use their psych sheets to evaluate the
like how fit they are to go out.
Exactly, depending on whatever the mission is.
Psych indices, it says.
Psych indices, that's right. So I'm sure it's just, you know, stats. The stats of a person, you know.
And they bring that up a lot. They're always because I think that was one of the things that the customs officer brought up. Every time she tried to pick someone, he's like, "Well, where's their psych indices?"
Right.
It's like that. So, like that's one of the most important things. Whatever.
So the first crew member we need. Oh, well, we should probably describe the mission. And I think I hinted on it in the beginning, but this captain or this general of apparently there's been a decades-long war between whoever we in the story, and the invaders, which sounds at times to be like an alien force, but it also sounds possibly like another faction of the human race. I wasn't quite clear on that, and maybe that was intentional. Maybe I'm just an idiot. I don't know. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I wasn't sure either. I think the side that she's on or whatever is the Alliance, it was called.
Right.
Yes,
and
the
then
Alliance.
the other side were
Well-
the invaders, but they didn't really specifically state like which galactic of the 5 galactic empires or whatever they were from. They were just like invaders generally from.
Right,
Yeah,
whatever
well,
politics we got, it was like super brief and just like very vague, or at least I thought so. I don't know. Again, I could be dumb. My parents say that to
and
me
the
all
thing is, I think in the war the invaders have more leverage. Like I think there's like nine races. I think like 9 alien races, including humans, and I think a majority are sided with the Alliance, or like the Alliance might have. No, sorry, the invaders. The invaders have like 3 or 4 with them. The Alliance have like 2 or 3, and then there's like 2 or 3 that are undecided.
right, and this is only important in that it sets the structure of our story. Again, like we don't get to see very much of the invaders or the Alliance. All we know coming into it is that the invaders have created a code, or early on in the story, it's all we understand of it is that it's a code called Babel-17 that for some reason appears before and after attacks on Alliance key strategic points. Over the airways, Babel-17 comes, an attack on a military point of the Alliance is destroyed, and so they recruit Rydra to break it. So that's how we get introduced. That's how we get started into the story. That's our starting point. That's all we know.
Right, and she comes out and says at like one of the opening scenes that it's not a code, it's a language, and that kind of sets the intrigue.
And we also get to see just how she works, because she is kind of at times an antisocial person, and I think it's because of her reaction to what we come out to find out is her telepathy. Because there's also this point, because this character, the general, whose name I forget, comes back. Remember, he falls in love with her, and she's able to see that and doesn't necessarily rebuff him, but sort of gives him enough to, I don't know, feel good about himself. It's like a very strange... Guys, turn your phones off. We're fucking recording an important podcast right now. What is happening?
Sorry.
What is happening right now?
Super in full diva
I'm
mode.
sorry, guys.
I'm going
That was my
full
computer.
Christian Bale on you guys. What the fuck
my
is going
God.
on right now?
Jesus Christ!
Well, if people would stop texting me. I'm sorry I'm so fucking popular. God damn it.
Turn your
Oh, my
disturb
phone's
on
blowing
your
up, too.
goddamn phone.
Oh, Dan, see, Dan and I, the most popular.
Two.
Yeah, so is mine. It's my girlfriend saying, "Shut the fuck up." Oh.
Yeah,
Please shut up.
mine's someone complaining at work.
Sorry.
It looks like. I'm not sure.
So we haven't heard from Jordan at all. Hey, bud.
Hey, how you doing?
What do you think about this whole book thing?
Or at least the beginning of it where we were at.
Yeah.
Where we're at so far. Well, one of the things that struck me the most, and I probably wasn't as taken up. I wasn't as, I hate to say it, probably the first time I wasn't radically impressed by a book that we've read for this podcast, but I enjoyed it. I guess it wasn't.
Yeah. Sorry,
like-
Jordan. Does somebody have music going on right now in the background?
That's on me. Let me go do something about that real quick.
Sorry.
Crack some skulls.
Perfect.
Crack some
Should I keep going,
skulls.
or-
Go ahead. Keep going.
No, don't go yet. Or go. I'll be back.
Wait, well, okay. All
No,
right,
we-
I'll go.
Let's let everybody. Okay.
Phil, tell me, Phil.
Nobody will.
Yeah,
Nobody will.
tell this guy who didn't read the book.
Yeah. You think I'm directing this ship? It's
God,
like a
no.
Captain Ahab. I kept thinking about Moby Dick with this book. Speaking of which, while Cooper's away,
Interesting.
just something about the ship and getting the crew together reminded me of the first parts of Moby Dick,
Sure.
and just
Sure.
like kind of the red light aspect, with
Oh,
tattoos and like body modification.
And a little
Oh, yeah.
language clip. We do use the word ship in both contexts,
Right.
in space and the sea.
We just
All
talked
right.
about a whole bunch of stuff, Cooper, but
We're done with the podcast?
Yeah, you missed it.
Clear enough.
Jordan, you were going to speak to
Sure.
the book up to this point.
Well, anyway, yeah. But something I was enjoyed was there was a reference to this guy named Wilhelm Reich and near the beginning, and I looked into him, and he was like a Freudian guy from the early 20th century who talked about muscular armature, and basically how the body, the way that the body moves, is representation of thinking. and I thought more about that throughout reading it. Like there's like a language in a body, how a body moves, and I think that plays a lot into maybe thinking about food and why food is a reoccurring motif of like sustenance or something that keeps the body maintained, or just emphasizing like in a Foucault kind of way, like the significance of the body over language. Um, what was I going to say? So that was something that was like kind of how I read the book, was the body, how the body can speak and ways that it can maybe be more universal. But I don't know. I wish it would have talked more. I felt like it could have gone farther with the Superior War idea. It was
I
a good
agree
book.
with you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up.
All right,
There was like
there's
big reviews.
yeah. Well, there was a lot that he didn't really just flat out and say. There are some parts where they talk about like the limits of language and how it influences perception. But there was I made a list of some words that he used. So let's talk about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis.
I just wanted to touch back because Jordan, I agree with you. I'm excited about the ideas and being able to talk about this because it's like a super simple adventure story that I really do enjoy. But I had trouble oftentimes with how he wrote this. I was not as engaged with the story, and I think it was a really cool set of concepts that he brought us to the edge of, and then was incapable or unwilling or just for whatever reason didn't take us over. I didn't feel like this truly explored a lot of the things that he did bring up in the story. It was a good book, not a great book for me.
I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought as well. I read it twice, and I read a guide that I stole off the internet. And after a second reading, it was pretty. I enjoyed it, but there's just let's really quick on the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. That's just the idea. I mean, I don't think they ever really worked together or published anything together, but they were just two dudes working on what would you call it? Linguistic relativity, right? Just the idea that the language and grammar that you speak influences the way that you perceive the world. I mean, there's a strong version that's pretty much thrown out as bullshit that says it determines the way you see the world.
That would be the extreme thing, is that your thoughts are can only extend as far as your language capabilities, or the language that you understand determines your thoughts.
Right. But one part that I read, Dan, and I'm actually kind of sorry I didn't read this. I'm sure you were excited to talk about some language philosophy shit, Dan. Because one thing that they talked about early on was I think Rydra is talking about thought and ideas and language, and she emphasizes that people think about like language as being separate from thought, as like a vehicle for thought, but she emphasizes that language is thought. So like the forms that it takes influence its essence and the structure of its essence and like the truth of its essence or something. And so even where I got to, she figured out on the ship how to get them out of their little stasis when they were first. We haven't got there yet, but the way she figured out was like talking about water and or their word for water or something.
So a big part of Babel-17 is that by learning it or understanding it, you are given like enhanced physical and mental abilities. So that was like the first instance that we're shown that. So she sort of taps into that water idea, and it's her first understanding of the Babel-17 language. And by understanding it, she's given like superhuman mental capabilities that she's able to then use to get her out of like their I think they're like adrift or something, or because that was like I think the first, maybe the first or second instance of sabotage on the ship.
It was the first one.
Yeah. So that's a part of Babel-17, is by learning it you are given enhanced abilities.
And well, we could talk about this more, but something that struck me just as like a potential for this sort of philosophical idea is that there could be a language that is so close to its object, right? Because language is a symbol that we use as a stand-in for an object. So when I say tree, you guys can picture a tree, and then we can tell a story with that.
Right.
But with Babel-17, there's something even in how it was notated, where there was like a 0, and it looked like the thing that it was talking about. Where
supposed to have like layers of meaning is what she
no,
always
it
talked
wasn't.
about.
It wasn't like that quite, because it was really direct. It was like when you
Yeah.
see this thing and hear the explanation of the language around it and those structures, it makes a lot of sense, and it also branches out into other aspects of knowledge, right? Like into mathematics and physics, which she's able to use. So that seems to be part of the magic of this language, and why she's so in love with it, is that it's like so organic and rich and like connected, that you could just like easily go between aspects of meaning or something.
There are parts of the book you didn't get to, unfortunately, but toward the end, just had to say that.
That's good.
Towards the end, when she gets better at Babel-17, at like learning it, understanding it, and thinking in it, whenever she comes out of it, she like expresses how displeased she is with the efficiency of English. Because like there's at one point, even we can talk about later, if you look at the text, there's like 2 conversations happening at the same time. One of them is like a public conversation in English, and one of them's her thoughts in Babel-17.
Oh, cool.
And it's much quicker. Like it's she's frustrated by how slow everyone else is like thinking.
She's like on a quantum level or something.
Which is really interesting, because when I was reading this, it was given that Babel-17 was this pretty powerful tool. But by the end of the book, and I think the takeaway of the book is that Babel-17 at the end of the day was still just a weapon. And so that was like a little jarring for me, because as we learn by the end of the story, Babel-17 obviously was still invented by the invaders and used as a weapon, because by learning and speaking Babel-17, you instantly are a traitor to the Alliance.
Right. Oh. The definition of alliance in Babel-17 is one who has invaded.
So we learn, or maybe we shouldn't jump there quite yet.
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, maybe we should backtrack to our plot real quick.
Well, yeah, hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Eric.
What's that, Trick?
Nothing.
You're a little muffled, Eric. No, is your mic muffled?
Says the guy who didn't even fucking read the book.
Dude, I'm not talking about reading. I'm just talking about your technical issues.
He's just speaking Babel-17 right now. He's frustrated about
really quick. So before we go back to the plot, we certainly need to do that.
Yeah.
Some of the I don't want to say this is directly related to Sapir-Whorf, but there are some phrases that he just kind of throws around in the speech of the characters that they really do. It kind of paints a picture that like they think about the world differently. So like the geo-ordering, right? We say words like Far East, New World, upper class, right? Things like that.
Illuminati.
It shows like a set of values, or at least a cultural idea. Whereas here they talk about Pan-Africa. I mean, considering the date, you know, like you have stuff like Black Panthers going on in like the 60s, and a lot of movement towards
Zulu
Pan-Africa.
shit, probably.
And he says that it subsumed Europe. He's like, oh yeah, remember back when Pan-Africa like subsumed Europe? He says Americasia. So I mean, I was thinking about this morning. I guess it's still the morning, but it was like, I don't know what that would be. It would be like what, America or North America, Russia, Australia. I don't know. I have no idea.
Has it been long enough that plate tectonics have?
Ooh, that's a good point too. I'm not quite
Probably
sure.
Not. That's
a long
hundreds
time.
Of thousands. Of
that would be fascinating, but I think this is more geopolitical.
Yeah, same.
But it's fun.
He uses the word suicide as a verb. He says like when she suicided.
Oh yeah,
which just sounds clunky, but it's kind of interesting. Another thing interesting is the words for live and dead are corporate and discorporate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
For astronaut, they use stellar men.
Hell yeah.
And at one point, they use right.
on me.
Yeah, they use writer as a comparative adjective. Like she says, like someone is righter than someone else.
Oh yeah,
which is kind of strange.
That might just be like a way of showing a lower class of a character.
Or
and just how language has changed over time.
Right, because I feel like those examples you just gave, like a lot of like the Pan-Africa and Ameri-Asia thing, is a pretty classic sci-fi trope to show, like, oh, the Earth you think you know is different, and I'm going to combine geopolitical entities that you're familiar with and the new ones. And I think it's a fun trope because it does make you think, like, ooh, what would like Ameri-Asia look like? But I think it also just shows like the Earth I'm talking about is different. You're not familiar with it at all.
Right,
just to further disorient the reader in this new sci-fi future.
You know, as your idle reader here who doesn't read, a thought strikes me about Dan's talking about how they use writer, like writer than him. This might have been like a bit of insight on Delaney's part where he saw the relativity of truth coming even way back then, like with mass media coming online with like radios and TVs or whatever would have been. And because now we have like this Trump era of post-truth where like before this, it wouldn't have made sense for somebody to be like righter than somebody else. Like it's either you're right or you're not. But then like in the future, there's this relativity and kind of this like post-modern idea of truth or whatever.
There are degrees of truth,
right?
Which is interesting because he lived in a time in which, we do live in like a. That is interesting. Like a degree, there are degrees of truth, but he was alive at like the height of the USSR, the height of the People's Republic of China, and like lived through their beginning, and so saw, through American media, what it meant for like totalitarianism truth, propaganda truth, and he certainly himself saw that on the American side as well. But there was definitive where it's like, this is the truth we say, no degrees, whether it's a truth or lie. But now we do live in like, there's like a diversity in truth for God knows what reason.
That's the kindest way. A diversity of truth. That sounds nice.
I like that.
Yeah, we're accepting of all kinds of truth.
Do you guys feel that there is like a higher objective truth that they reference? Like part of me thinks, I was flipping through it right now, and in line 17, sorry, not line 17, page 17, 18. So
your book is broken down in like Homerian style, right? Like it's.
Yes, it's a science fiction.
You're working on a thesis.
Almost.
Almost.
But let's see. There's a part where writer Wong says, I listen to other people stumbling about with their half thoughts and half sentences and their clumsy feelings that they can't express, and it hurts me. So I go home and burnish it and polish it and weld it to a rhythmic frame, make the dull colors gleam, use the garish artificiality to pastel so it doesn't hurt anyone anymore. That's my poem. I know what they want to say, and I say it for them. So I'm curious if there is, and the same with this muscular armature, if there is like an objective language. And even Phil, you were talking about like a symbol representing something in a pure form for what it means in the real world.
Right.
So I'm curious, is Delaney talking about truth as there being like a higher truth that like we should all like be like in unison with? Or is it like degrees of truth?
A linguistic truth?
I read that more as Delaney trying to spell what a writer's job is. And I think I only picked it up because I think that it's pretty common in books where writers try to have, if the protagonist happens to be a literary, like somebody who is a literary character, I think there's always going to be a passage in which they try to explain the higher power of writing, almost like Plato's philosopher king. The writer's job is to go home and take the unwashed masses' half-formed thoughts and form them into golden nuggets that are ultimate truth.
Palpable.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think of that might be how he thinks of, again, like referencing Plato, this idea of like capital T thought or truth and lowercase t or truth that we have to channel.
Babel-17 is approaching some kind of truth with its compact efficiency and using
again.
language.
It totally does, but at the same time, it still ends on it being a weapon.
Right.
I think that's like the big rug being pulled out from under us, right? You know, it's like we are thinking that this is somehow some new, beautiful way of humankind being able to come together, and then it's like, nope, still just a weapon.
Ouch.
Nope. Psych.
But again, I could be wrong.
That hurts. I have to say.
I'm having fun because I'm also reading Joseph Campbell's.
No shit! Same here.
You're was
Thousand Faces?
Hero of 1,000 Faces?
Yeah.
It's a fascinating read. Super interesting ideas, but and same with Delaney, they heavily lean on like Jung and Freud as their psychoanalytic truths and stuff, which coming from like a 2018 perspective and being like, oh my god, we laugh in the faces of most of their ideas and concepts.
What do you guys think? I think it's hilarious. It's thousands of years in the future. People have surgery to look like goats and lions and stuff, but they still have public phones. I thought that was so funny. Like they have to find a phone.
That is true. That is crazy.
And they're like flying on fucking flying saucer discs, and they're like, I gotta find a phone.
Right. Because I think what I was getting at there was with bringing up the Hero of 1,000 Faces and in sort of like the outdated way of thinking about psychology is I think that needs to be said about Sapir-Whorf because none of it's been proven. For a long time, actually, it was like discounted, and now there is sort of like been for a couple decades now a resurgence in this idea of like we can look at this. We don't need to take it as hardcore as a lot of the theorists out there would have liked us to think of Sapir-Whorf theory. It just is kind of a fun idea, and we do see it sometimes. You know, our language determines our thoughts in very fun, interesting ways, but it might not be as hardcore as it was once thought.
Right. The strong version, I think, is kind of silly, right? It would essentially mean that like nothing can really be translated, or if it is, like you'd be almost a different person, like thinking in a completely different way.
Or I think like there was a lot of thought experiments. You know, at one point I remember reading that based on Sapir-Whorf theory, like Native Americans would have not been able to see Christopher Columbus's ships because they had no concept of ships, so it would have been they would have been invisible to them. And I'm like, that's
complete bullshit. Sense. It would hang together under different concepts.
Right.
Like so everything can be translated. But here's a good example that I like to think of is and it has to do with Prince, right? Purple Rain was a famous movie and wonderful album, but the movie was famous all over the world. And
it was much better than the album.
I don't know about that, but there's an African country. I don't know which one it is. They don't have a word for purple. So when they translated the title of Purple Rain, it was a really long and clunky title. It was like rain that is red with some flecks of blue inside. This is kind of silly. Even just today. So like I'm living in Thailand. There was a student said 2-syllable word. And she was like, do you understand this in Thai? And I was like, no, can you explain it? And like, none of the students could explain it. They're like, it's so difficult. And then I asked me lady Pat, I was like, hey, what's going on? Like, what does this word mean? And she was like, it's the feeling when if you, like, we would say shot yourself in the foot. Like you initially had the opportunity to do something, and by your own actions, you made it so that you can't possibly partake in that opportunity, and now you feel regret.
Right. But that's the whole definition for that one word.
Yeah, that's 2 syllables that they do.
Right.
And like in ours, we have a saying, shot yourself in the foot. But then translating that in a concept, it's like really clunky.
Really that's it. And I think that is at the base of this book. That's what he's getting at. Like there really is no, like, he's not a hardcore Sapir-Whorf theorist. The only instance we see that is in the idea that within Babel-17, there is no concept of I. So there's no concept of individualism, which we see that reflected in one of the characters of the book, who's been like tortured beyond mental capability, and then essentially retaught this new language and restructured as a human being, and so he has no concept of the word I. That's sort of like the only hardcore definitive we have in this new world.
Right.
When it comes to working with Babel-17, which is really interesting. It rang so much of Ayn Rand's The Anthem. If any of you guys have ever heard that a long time ago.
Book, man. I like that book.
It was a great book. I know Ayn Rand, like, to be fair, she deserves it.
Yep.
She gets some slack for writing some pretty out there ideas, but The Anthem was fun, and this concept of Babel-17 reminded me so much of that, because it kind of rang as like a fear-mongering tactic of like, look what happens if a language gets rid of the concept of an individual.
Nice.
Right. Let's get back to the plot, shall we?
Yeah.
We have to go all the way back to holy shit. So we haven't even got the ship captain yet, or like the driver of our spaceship.
Right. For commentary.
So Appleby is in the red light district with Wong. We're getting a ship captain. They're in a bar. They remove all their clothes. There's a huge cage match going on. The cage being a huge suspended orb within the high-ceilinged bar in which two combatants have to go at it. One of them is a dragon. One of them is a griffin-like character. It's like a lion with eagle wings, I think is how I pictured it. Would
Brass.
be our Brass would be our captain. Again, and we say this, but they're humans who have undergone such cosmetic surgery, which is the concept in this book, cosmetic surgery, combination of cosmetic and surgery, that they now look and appear and have like the musculature of what would be a dragon or a griffin.
Yeah. He was like, they mentioned cougar-like features with him, and like.
But he's also like 9 feet tall, right? And has claws and manes.
And he walks on all fours most of the time.
Right.
So a lot of this was pretty out there stuff where I had like a hard time conceptualizing, I think, what he was trying to get at, which again could have been my take of it. But I was curious what you guys said, because cosmetic surgery is not like a determining fact, like not like a huge part of this book in that it drives the plot, but it is something that he uses in this book.
I think the way I thought of it was like tattoos. Like in the past, tattoos were seen as like a sailor thing or a low class thing.
Right.
Or it's like the evolution of like implants. Like, you know how people do implants in their faces and heads and stuff.
Sure.
Nowadays, yeah. Again, this was like 1966, so
totally.
Right.
Because
out of the curve there, Samuel.
Right. Again, it's soft science fiction in the fact that he never explains really how this stuff works. We're just like given characters like Brass who have been changed so dramatically that they're walking on all fours, they have claws, they look like a lion, they have manes and wings.
And anatomically, biologically, they can still function somehow.
Right.
Right. Which is never described.
No.
Which is fun. Like it's fun.
Like
you just like picture it, and you don't need really to know how it works, I guess.
Did you notice with Brass that he doesn't speak P's?
That
all of the P's in his language or in his speech are like apostrophes.
I know, and I think that was because of some cosmetic. I think like they removed his front teeth to put huge fangs in. I think there was like something in his surgery that made it so he couldn't like a lisp.
Yeah. So we get
the plot though.
Yeah. So we get Brass. Like they recruit Brass. They recruit Callie and Ron, which were part of a triple.
Right. They lost their
girl died, and they're kind of in mourning.
And they're
and then it gets strange. So they eventually go to the discorporate sector, which is I guess a place in town where the souls of dead people hang out.
It's like a bank.
It's not really
what's deposited are. Like I guess souls of people who've died.
Because they have to go to the morgue,
right?
No, that's the morgue. So they're on their way to the morgue where they go get that girl and reanimate her, and she becomes part of the new triple. but they have to go through the discorporate sector where it's basically just a bunch of ghosts flying around, I guess.
And that's where they get their nose, ears, and
what's
eyes.
funny is, they get the nose, ear, and eye there, but they also, so Daniel Appleby, they let him, they're at a public phone, I think, and they're like, just wait here. And he gets hustled by a dead whore.
A succubus.
Yeah, right. Which is great.
That was awesome.
And the language in that section is really weird because, like, you know, she kind of, I don't know if she drugs him, but she like kind of takes him over, and the way his thinking, he ends sentences in like with prepositions in really, really weird ways. I find it in mine. It's 39. So let's see. Let me find it. Oh shit. A
lot of dead air left. We should vamp.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Right, here's a sentence. Here's a sentence. He says, she was laughing like as if, and then period.
Right.
So it was like his brain so fogged he was unable to complete his sentences and words and stuff and thoughts.
That part was really hard for me to get through. I don't know why.
Yeah, that was strange.
There was again, like, I don't like the. Maybe I'm
the
just like
being was so weird that, and like he just so quickly went into it. I was just like, wait, they're reanimating people,
right? So they have ghosts on the ship.
Crew? So they're like
part of me feels like this book was fun, but now that we're talking about it, I almost don't care. Is that terrible to say?
No, that's great.
Like, there is so much. Like, this is a fun book. There are so many fun and cool and interesting elements. How they get their crew is fun. Them in space is...
You can break up with this book if you want.
I mean, it almost feels like a chore now to have to go through. It is like trying to talk about like an adventure story where you're like, well, it was fun. Like, there's some big themes that we can talk about, but if you want, go and read it. It'll tickle, it'll tickle your fancy, but like, it's not like there's much going on.
I felt like one of the most interesting parts of the way the crew members work were the nose, the ears, and the eyes. How every time they're out navigating, like, one literally just worried about the smells, one literally just worried about what they were hearing, and one literally just worried about what they were seeing.
Right. And again, they were like dead souls of the ship, which is cool.
And it's funny. What's funny is they complain about physical things. So there's a part later in the book where, like, Rydra asked the ear, eye, and a nose. She's like, "How's it down there?" And they're like, "You need to clean this place out. It's fucking dusty down here."
Right. They're like hypersensitive to that.
Right. It's like, why would a ghost care about? Care about that?
And then just to speak more on the ship, like, they have like a crew of kids who run the ship, but they're all like 19 and 20, which is an interesting idea.
Someone named the Slug, just some big fat fuck that takes care of them.
Right, like like their
medical guy.
Yeah, right.
And she specifically wanted young kids too, so she could like mold them. And
well, that's like what are those guys called? There's like a name for that crew. The platoons,
the kids. The platoon.
It sounds like they're like always supposed to be kids, which again in this universe, kids are like 19 and 20. But the way he writes them is like they act like they're 10, 11, children. 12. Right. Yeah.
And she's always asking about them as the kids.
Like, and they act like kids.
Well, they need to be provided for on a basic level, right? Like, make sure they wash up and stuff.
Right. They're always like picking their nose and they have snot and stuff. But again, 19 and 20, which may be how Delaney views his peers at the time, because he wrote this when he was like 23.
Right. Well, and Rydra's only 26.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
Again, it's fun. We could. I don't know. I want to speed ahead because I don't know if we can go like bit by this book. Again,
right.
What's your time constraint again, Dan? Do you have like just a half hour left?
No, I've got an hour. I can do an hour and a half. I work at 1 to 5.
Oh, okay.
Discovered. So,
but like I don't know. Whereas like Dune was fun to break down. This one was more like let's just like go by the big huge points because she gets her crew.
Sure, it was fun. Right. Bounce back on interesting parts. I mean, I think we're doing it pretty well.
Yeah, this is fine.
We're live right now. Crew. Fuck it, do it live. Yeah. Fuck it.
So they get the crew. And then they shoot off, and like there's I think like a sabotage or two, right?
They're going
in a different language.
I think she before they even take off, I believe she figures out that Babel-17 is not a code; it is a language. She's able to understand it enough to pinpoint where they should go next, which is to just a planet that has an ambassador that has a weapon.
It's like
on
the
it.
it's the war yards they call it. I think like
Yes.
it's like the center of where they of like defense or offense, I guess.
Where
really,
she meets like the Baron and Baroness.
right.
So that's like where like the second act sort of begins. Is we got our crew. The adventure begins, and they have to go to the war yards because that's where another suspected attack by the invaders is going to be.
Right, and then can we break that down a little bit, because she's interested in going there to monitor the radioactivity on the site, right?
Yes, because before an attack, Babel-17 is shot all over the radios,
right,
of the Alliance,
right, and so she, in talking to the general in the bar, realizes that there's way more context that she's missing, and that all she's been given is a transcript on a page that doesn't even show the voices as they change, right? It's just like a bunch of text all in a row. And she's like, wait, you guys have all this stuff, and I'm trying to figure this out. It's just like a puzzle, somebody's trying to put together a puzzle and they don't have all the pieces or whatever.
Right.
Like, what the fuck? So, yeah. Shit. Anybody?
No, you're good. And then essentially she's able to figure out everything she needs to know.
I think the most
So she needs to go see and just hear the voices as they're trying to organize this sabotage. Basically.
Yes,
right.
exactly.
Well, they invite them all to dinner at that house, and she leaves the ears, eyes, and nose on the ship to monitor shit while they're at this manor.
And something interesting is, so throughout the book, she keeps in contact with the ear, nose, and eye, but they mention that, or Samuel Delaney mentions that discorporate souls can't talk with corporate souls without the corporate souls forgetting everything right away. So what they have to do is they both know Basque, like the language Basque,
right.
Which is super interesting.
Right. So she'll just start thinking in Basque, and she's like, "Oh, that's the ear, nose, and eye."
Yeah, that's their signal because
they translate it into Basque so they can remember it.
Yeah, so she'll have a thought in Basque and then have to remember that. Oh, that's what the discorporate's telling me, which is really fun. I did like that part. Basque is a super interesting.
It's that weird Spanish-French mix.
Well, actually, they don't.
It's old.
They don't even
like
know
the oldest
really.
Indo-European language.
Yeah.
It's thought to be the oldest Indo-European language on the planet.
It's spoken by people in the Basque region in Spain, but it actually has nothing to do with Castilian or anything. They're still trying to figure out its language.
Because they all live in they're all isolated in the mountains in that region.
It's pretty down there. I've been there and eaten their food and drank their booze. It was good.
Nice.
Speaking
of food and booze, they go to that place, right? The war yards.
Yeah, some slimy Baron takes them into their to show her off.
And before they have dinner, the Baron takes her to show off a bunch of spies that they're
first a bunch of weapons.
First
of all, it's a classic adventure tale where it's I'm going to show you my weapons, and they progressively get worse and worse until he's like, "Ooh, I shouldn't show you what's in this room."
It's
and it's my new fucking genetically engineered son who has been written to be a spy for us,
right?
Which ends up being the killer of him,
right? So they have dinner together.
If that's not confusing to every listener,
right?
All 10 of them.
Well, it was some super advanced genetic type of robot thing that could change its looks upon
I thought it was a person.
Yeah, that's what it gets kind of clunky because I don't think it was a robot. I think he tried to describe it as his child that was so genetically engineered that it had
it was genetically programmed to have the ability to change its appearance and talk about subjects at certain length, and it had they said it had one subject that it could talk at academic levels with for an hour and a half, and so they pre-programmed. Yeah, it's not like a robot. It's a you know,
it's a human being, but it's like a human being who's had every sort of like free will removed from it. And Jordan, so, like, going back to what you have like facial structures, like Who Hut, the restaurant. That's what happens to me when I eat there. I just lose all free will and shit my pants for 16 hours.
Jordan, are you still with us? Hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
No, but
that's a hot. No, that's a Who Hut joke for you.
Yeah.
But I think going back to that, I think what I picked up on was the spy had the capability, had so much control over its musculature that it could change the muscles in its face, therefore change its facial features, which, because I am a conspiracy nut, is something I've read that the CIA does try and train their spies to do, or our spies, I guess.
Yeah, our spies.
They're our guy.
No, but it's all. I mean, because again, it's like super fun historically to place him in writing this in context with like the Cold War and everything, where like spies was a huge part, and it was a huge part of literature and like popular culture. And this idea that like a human was so trained that they could change how they looked by just like controlling their cheek or lip or eyebrow muscles. It was a neat idea that I think he took to like the extreme by saying, what if we, CRISPR style engineered our children to the point of being a super assassin, which is essentially what this weapon is.
And a classic Freudian trope. They're eating dinner and the spy kills the motherfucker.
It kills the creepy Baron, whose name I cannot remember.
Baron Dervorko or Vordurko.
Right, exactly. So it kills him. That was the sabotage. I think maybe even some of the war yards blew up, but at the very least, Baron Dervorko, who is watching over these war yards of the Alliance, is assassinated. It is done by this genetically engineered son assassin of his, and as we learn a little bit later, it was because of, again, Babel-17.
Yeah,
Rydra gets onto the ship with her crew, tries to escape. Sabotage.
Their ship takes off with no one at the wheel.
Yeah. Well, the ship takes off on her commands that she says she didn't give. A whole series of shit happens. They get all types of fucked up and fly into outer space.
And I think it's implied that, right? They just shoot off toward in space you're gonna go toward the
heaviest mass.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah, the heaviest mass. And
which is just a nova, is what they said.
Yeah, and so they're just kind of flying around suspended, and they get subsumed, or like what, they get picked up, right, by a giant ship. What
was it called?
The Jebel Tarek. Jebel's Mountain.
Tarek's Mountain.
And it's basically, so it's they're in the no man's land in like the war, basically, it's in like an unclaimed area where both invader ships and alliance ships like fight sometimes. And Jebel is basically this dude running a giant ship that he plays both sides. Like the alliance kind of let him go because he kills a lot of the invader ships, but also he'll let the invaders like take over the alliance ships and then kill the invaders so he can get both, like, resources from both of them.
He's a pirate.
He's a space pirate. He's a
that's right.
He lets the invaders take out the alliance, and then he takes out the invaders and takes both things.
Right. Yeah.
This is where he meets, or Rydra meets the Butcher.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Eric, I want to talk to Eric about this, because the image I had in my head is the
Eric?
big dude? Yeah, right.
I pictured just like a nude Eric. From the waist down, just buff as shit, Eric.
Well, he's kind of, he reminds me of
me.
So you were
right. In the flesh.
I was confused.
Who's the big dude in Eric? Who's the big guy in Guardians of the Galaxy? The big
Drax the Destroyer.
I actually pictured him too.
Because there are times he disagrees with Jebel, and all he'll do is smack his fist into his hand.
Yes. So, and he's
like, oh,
in Guardians, Drax is like super bad with language and like being super literal and like
Yes.
like understanding like intonations and like sarcasm.
Dude, I totally picture Drax also as the Butcher in this book. Which makes me wonder, I wonder, because, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy was like an old 80s comic, and I wonder if the writers of that, whose names escape me, took inspiration from this book.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, you guys, real quick. Damn. I was going to say, we had, oh
shit, unplugged.
Shit just came unplugged. But we had 3 viewers on our stuff. Now it's down to 2. Let's just say hello to the one person that's watching this.
Hello.
Hi.
What's their name? What's their handle?
I don't know. I can't see it.
Shout out to the one viewer. What up?
What up?
DM me. I got pics.
Just
a variety of pictures.
But I was just gonna say,
editor, take note.
We just had, we got an editor. Thanks. We did have 3 watching, so I wanted to say if there's anybody watching and they wanted to comment, we'll fucking give a shout out.
Ask a question about the book.
You can ask about Dan's haircut, or Jordan's beard,
or why Phil couldn't finish a book on time.
You can ask about anything you want. Yeah, I think that'd be fun. We could do a little hang here potentially.
Yeah.
But
all night.
The Butcher was fun as a character because, again, he is who Rydra is able to further understand Babel-17 with, because he is if you're the one person who hasn't seen Guardians of the Galaxy, Drax, like you said, is a character who has limited language capabilities, and that is sort of like the Butcher. The Butcher has like almost using the Freudian metaphor, like not even like Freudian thoughts again. He is kind of like the epitome of id, just like reacting on emotion, and how we're introduced to him, reacting on emotion. He, like you say, if he doesn't understand something, he just pounds his fist into his palm. He's very violent, very brutal.
He scares them right off the bat, or he scares her right off the bat because of an interaction where he pounds his fist.
Yeah, he like exudes violence and just like thoughtless, animalistic brutality.
And she finds out pretty quick that he's actually the one in control of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's got Jebel under his thumb, and it's initially presented as Jebel's like the leader of the ship.
Right.
The one in command, the smartest guy in town, and he's kind of at the whims of this violent thing.
Or what we see it as, and then we learn that it's because what he truly speaks and understand is Babel-17.
Right.
So he's superhuman smart and superhuman capable, but he's able to present himself only in this like very broken.
And no one knows about his past. They know that he was in there's a planet where they have like high security. It's like a high security prison that he broke out of.
Totally.
So he has a mark. Yeah, he has a mark on his arm. But that's really
prison.
Yeah, I think so.
No, I think it's prison planet.
Prison planet.
But she asked what a planet prison.
Planet, prison? Question mark. Coming June 2019.
What does our one listener think?
Well, it's apparently my brother.
Yes.
Hey, Jack. Yeah.
Yeah. He texted me though. He said, "Hey, I'm your one viewer," and I was like, "Hey, motherfucker, comment on the video so it looks like we have a fucking following."
Yeah.
So
he's gonna have the same last name as you.
Well, no.
Jack, anyway,
I mean, listen, we take what we can get around here, Coop. You know.
That is true. I don't mean to disparage our one viewer.
We'll get a bunch of hits from.
He'll say something, Jack.
Smash that like button.
He'll
subscribe. If we get 10,000 likes, we'll do something crazy.
Oh, Dan, I also wanted to tell you,
sir.
Dan. I'm coughing too. I've been sick and I fucking smoked too much or whatever too.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Oh hell yeah. But there is a mute button. You like that?
Oh. Yeah, certainly there is.
Hold on,
there
Cooper.
is indeed.
Hold on.
Oh god.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. That was good.
Editor, edit that out.
No, we're
that.
live. It's too late. Mark that. But there's a mute button on this Google Hangouts feed. Do you see it, Dan? Do you have that on your little operator?
I reckon I do.
It's got a microphone icon with a slash through it, and if you click on that, it'll mute it for when you cough or whatever.
Good job, Dan. Good job.
Oh.
Do you see it?
Oh, I thought it did something completely different.
I almost don't want to know what you thought it did.
Good.
Delete your hard drive, boys. Let's get out of here.
So wait, where were we? Damn it. I have to go
and then
sorry, I had to mute myself.
Why don't you guys go back to the plot or something smart?
Sure,
like
sure.
That.
So
I'm gonna go pee.
So all right, great.
I love Phil has the luxury to go pee during this podcast because he didn't read it and he's just
the funny thing is that I'm the one that most needs this plot summary, but I also am the one that most has to go pee. So
you gotta go piss pretty bad.
You guys talk about something thematic or philosophical if you want as filler. That would be good too.
We can vamp for this part.
You can make fun of me the whole time while I'm gone. That might be kind of funny.
Yeah,
I'm sure Jack would love that. He's gonna tune in for that.
I'm going.
I know this is like terrible to say about a book club podcast, but again, the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, I don't care what happened in this book.
I just was very underwhelmed by this book.
Is that wrong? Am I
no
at fault here?
I think I was very underwhelmed by I think it was clunky. I thought it was like way too quick in pacing in some parts.
It's a short book, right? It's like 180 pages.
Yeah,
not that short. But it's pretty short.
I got through it really fast. Like it took me only like 4 days to read it.
It took me like 2-3 days too. Once I got down to it, again, this was about 2.5 years ago when I finished it.
But I found myself like being confused half of the time. Like in a lot of those scenes, there just stuff would happen so quick. I'd be like, "Wait, what? He just died?" Or
the pacing will be like at the end of one chapter, they're like, we need to get to the war yards, and then like the next chapter starts out and they're like, oh, now we're here at the war yards.
Yeah, they were like all of a sudden
really quick
on flying saucer discs, and I was like, wait, what?
Which is good. Like I remember some Cormac McCarthy books where that same thing happens.
Totally.
But it's made up for, and I don't recognize it as much. Excuse me. You guys are right. I mean, it was like it read like a serialized dime store novel.
Right.
It's written like and as a swashbuckling adventure.
You know what? It reminds me of?
Yeah.
I took a novella class in college, and we did Melville, like some of his early stuff.
Was it like a normal novel class, but you just like went to junior college?
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
Eric, was that with Brady?
Yeah. It was Brady Harrison.
I took that same class.
Did you do it was Bartleby, the Scrivener?
Oh yeah, and
yeah.
I can't remember the other one. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, there was another one. It was like a book collection that.
But that's interesting, like a whole class on novellas.
Yeah, it was awesome. But like, so when we were talking about Melville, he used to write these like fun adventure sailing stories, like of his era that were actually really popular and like way more popular than like Moby Dick or any of his other stuff at the time. And that's what he became like popular for. And that's what this kind of reminded me of, some like crazy like get on a ship, get a crew, and go like sailing through the oceans, the 7 seas, but the 7 spaces, the 7
totally. No, it did read like that.
Yeah, and that's how I kind of felt about it. And I just thought it was, but at the same time, he was trying to build this like, or hint at this very intricate like galactic empiric system and like crazy like geopolitical things like we're talking about. And I just felt like the pacing was so quick that it got me flustered that there wasn't more detail in some of that stuff.
I think it's something that I would do, where I would think of some super brilliant idea that I think is super clever and references things that are like super cool, and then try to write something around it, and then I'll show my girlfriend it, and she'll just ask me to politely go back to work, like at Sushi Hana washing dishes. But this, like, it just, I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh, but it was like, just let's take a bunch of really cool ideas and then like write an adventure story around it, and it was entertaining. It was fun to read, but I just don't know how much more I can like look into it, because again, once we crack the whole like Sapir Whorf idea of it, it's kind of like, oh, we did it. It's about how language controls or like writes our thoughts.
Which was such a big draw for all of us, so that was something we expected so much from.
Yeah,
totally. I feel like we were all really psyched about that part of it when we were talking about it months ago.
Which it is cool, but I think we have like tapped it. I don't know how much more I can be like, yeah, he did it.
There
like,
is a cool. Well, we are, and we're getting there really soon.
Right, I gotta go pee though.
All right.
Cooper's gonna go.
All right, well, let's plot this shit out really quick.
Okay.
Thanks, I'm back, so we could do some important structuring here.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh yeah, great. So they wake up. She wakes up on that ship, in a net, and she thinks in Babel-17, and it basically gives her the ability to like get out of it. And so she frees herself, frees the crew. They meet Jebel and the Butcher. And pretty much right away, they get there's an attack, like that. They get to watch the invaders attack some Alliance ships, and then they send in their own ships to kill the invaders. And the language they use is really strange. So I'm going to read a little bit. When I can find it, I have it dog-eared here. So Jebel is someone is giving out instructions to these ships, and they say, here. From the speaker came Tarek's voice. Hear this. The strategy is asylum. Asylum. Repeat a third time. Asylum. Inmates gather to face Caesar. Psychotics ready at the K-word gate. Neurotics gather before the R-word gate. Criminally insane prepare for discharge at the T-word gate. All right, drop your straitjackets. Which, like, I have no fucking idea what's going on there.
Right.
It is probably just technical. It sounds like they're using these words as technical jargon, like for strategy. There's some other ones. Yeah. The hunter and the hunted have engaged. Well, not that. Here, I'm going to find, there's more. Oh, neurotics proceed with delusions of grandeur. Napoleon Bonaparte take the lead. Jesus Christ bring up the rear. See, yeah, there is a few more. Oh, prepare to, and then right before they attack, they say, prepare to penetrate hostile defense mechanisms. All right, administer medication.
Yeah, they totally.
Yeah, kind of interesting.
It seems like contractions of the English language to the idea of like in the future we're compacting language to mean more per. I don't know.
Yeah,
more
I'm not
less.
sure.
Less is more, right?
Oh shit! We got a comment. We got a comment.
Nice.
Who is it?
Kaylee Adams says, "Looking good, boys." With
them boys.
With a BOIS and
Here,
two
where's my
exclamation
Gucci
points.
hat? I'm missing my
yeah, you should put that on.
Yeah,
but that's actually Jack's girlfriend, lady.
Well,
so,
next time she could use BOIS.
Well, actually, it's Jack.
About it.
Never mind. It's Jack under her account. So.
Well, that's even cooler.
Well, hi Jack.
Hello.
We love you.
We love you.
So we got to the end.
Well, so
look,
right.
oh, Gucci hat. Dan's got it.
Not quite.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, Gucci hat.
Guys, I have to say, can I just say something? I can only talk for 3 more minutes. I have to go.
Better stuff to do.
Yeah, give us your closing
final thoughts.
Oh, thanks for
Final
gracing
thoughts.
us with your presence, Jordan.
Is that
Jordan?
A hint of sarcasm at a text?
No. God.
Don't listen to him. He didn't fucking read the book.
We do need to. You need to call me, or I need to call you though. I miss
Jordan is lying horizontal right now. He
I love
is
you. I love
on the
you,
ground.
Hey,
Thinking about this book.
J-Bone, you should final thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, can you give us your whole brain before you go, Jordan, please? It's always gold.
Okay, I'm not sure how to.
It's true.
Translate that.
You got 3 minutes.
Okay, cool. Oh, I'm not going to use all of it, but because this book's not good enough. But
Jay.
All right, do it. Let's go. Let's do it, J-Bone.
The book is good. I'm surprised it won the Nebula Award. I mean, does that just mean the science fiction was okay? Maybe it was just very inventive. Maybe it was going into more philosophical territory that most books at that time didn't. This was what 66.
Right.
66,
yeah. I don't know. I think it just never really felt solid to me. It never felt grounded. It felt kind of like I could put my fingers through it, like it was ephemeral, like a Discorporate or something.
Nailed
Oh,
look at that! Bringing it back.
hit that
around.
one. We're
Wow.
live, folks. Let me remind you, he set that one up.
Yeah. Using key words from the book. Wow.
Not edited.
It's okay. I mean,
Editor, edit that.
yeah, I plug it back in. I don't know. Of all the books that we've read in this book club, it's the one I've been least impressed with. I'm glad I read it. It just didn't. I don't know. I just and the end of it. I know you guys are going to talk about it, so I'm not going to talk about it.
Well,
directly,
whatever.
but-
You can
Go ahead.
Doesn't matter.
Well, I felt what they could have done was. I was never like scared. I was never like, oh no, what's going to happen? It was just
Right.
like the really bad thing had already happened, and they just couldn't realize that it was happening the whole time, which is kind of scary, I suppose, that she was using the language and it was infecting her. But it never felt like she went to the other side, or there was never like a big risk. It was just more like a thrill. It was like, oh, are we gonna like shoot this? Are we gonna is our spaceship gonna go into this portal in time? And it just never really hit me. It was okay.
Did you like the
Yeah.
philosophical concepts it offered at least, or not as much?
Well,
Not worth it.
I felt like I just felt like I had to dig for
Yeah.
it. Like the muscular armature thing was like, oh, a reference of someone. Let me just like research the shit out of this and see if it does something. It did a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And the poetry also wasn't amazing, but I don't know.
Yeah, the poetry did nothing for me.
No, yeah.
Yeah,
Nothing.
it just seemed like mediocre poetry. No
Did
offense
you-
to the hit.
Before you do leave too, Jordan, it's your turn next to pick for books.
Oh damn.
Yeah, so
You can think on it.
So I'm not going to pick this book, but I don't know if you guys know about I helped someone move today and they gave this to me, but this Foucault's Pendulum.
Oh
book,
yeah.
which is just
Oh
a
shit.
idiot book. It's just like really, it would be really mean for me to do that to you guys. It's so fucking dense. But I'll tell you guys. I'm not really sure yet. I have finished classes, and in 2 weeks I'll be freed up.
Oh dear.
But yeah.
Oh gosh.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
well, I'll have something.
As
sooner
the
than that.
audience, I will say that is not appealing to me.
What's that?
As the audience, Phil,
Just the density. I don't.
Oh, the
I don't like-
500 page.
Yeah, I don't like dense shit, man. I look at memes most of the time as the audience.
You want to read a book about the Kabbalah?
Oh well, that looks. I like pictures.
Pictures? It's got pictures. Okay, that's me. I'm done. Thank you
Jordan.
for picking this book, though. Yeah,
Let us know what your pick is, anyhow.
I will. I'll text the crew, and I can join that group text, but we can talk about that later.
You can. Did you get a space
You
phone?
got off of
No.
a space phone,
you got a space phone? B?
a Babel-17 phone.
Oh,
Oh,
Wow,
It's
The
Babel
smarter than
17
that.
public phone.
very topical.
nice. Okay.
Okay,
all right,
Jordan,
well,
love
well,
you.
it was fun night, guys. All right. We'll see you soon. Bye, wasters,
Toodles.
or whatever the stupid thing you said.
Fuck nerds.
Hey, fuck you too, man.
All right, he's gone. Now
I'm
we
a
can talk
proud
lot of shit
wastoid.
about him.
Yeah, now that the grown-ups are all together here.
Yeah, it
No,
was
no.
a sleepy time, guys.
No, he's a busy man. He's finishing up
yeah.
his masters or some shit.
He's an
I don't
actual
even have
teacher.
my bachelor's.
Yeah, forget it, man. Doesn't even.
But anyways, yeah.
So, all right,
to
back
circle
to plot.
in.
Yeah. All right. So there's the space battle where they yell out "Jesus Christ, take the wheel" and all that shit. And then after that, so there's an invader. So I think Trick, you wanted to know if these were like humanoid or not. I think they are humanoid because there's like one of the they get one of the invaders and they fight with them. And it's a pregnant woman, and they say that like the invaders, they hire pregnant women to be the space captains because their reflexes are better.
Right, they're heightened. Their senses are heightened or whatever.
Yeah, their sentences are their sentences
because they're more
heightened,
protective, or something.
But then so Rydra can't sleep, I think, and she finds that the butcher was trying to save the baby, and she's like, "Why?" And he can't express himself, so he's just like, "It died. It shouldn't have died." And like she kind of, I think they end up talking, and she figures out that like, oh, he speaks a different language, and he thought that if he could save the baby, he would have someone to talk to. because he feels alone, because he's thinking in a language that no one else can. And eventually it's kind of obvious that it's going to be Babel-17, right?
Right.
Like,
And
she's like, what kind of language could he speak? And it's like, well, it's probably the one that's mentioned all throughout the book.
Well, the title of the book is
right. And it's the same thing with I don't know what you guys, the plot reveal that Rydra is the one that's sabotaging it.
Right.
I thought toward the end it's kind of like, well, no shit. It's like, she's like, who could it be? I trust everyone on the crew.
It's
Who
also
could it be?
It's also no shit, but it's also low stakes. When it was finally revealed, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that was happening.
Right. Yeah. He tried to jumble so much in at the end that you almost kind of forget about the whole.
Well, even throughout, even from the beginning of the sabotage, he like throws it in. Like, Rydra will be thinking to herself, she's like, I must find out what Babel-17 is. Oh, right. And also, who's sabotaging my ship? You're like, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. That is a thing, too.
Oh, yeah, that happened. They were worried about that at one point.
They do have the really cool moment. So, like, her and the butcher talking, this is the part when she tries to teach him the meaning of I and you, and it kind of works, not really. But there's a ship next to them from a different alien race called the Cerebians. And so this is, I think this passage, it was where like he's really talking about like Sapir-Whorf stuff. Because even describing the ship, like apparently it just looks like nonsense compared to what humans would build. Like he describes it as like 3 poached eggs flying across the sky. Or something. Or like it's like
which
a bunch
made me hungry.
Yeah, right. But so she's talking to the butcher about word for eye, and he's like, do they have a word for eye? And like, I think I have this dog-eared, where she's like, he's like, do they have a word for eye? And she's like, well, yeah, under a certain centigrade.
Right.
So it's like they have 3 different words for their identity based on what temperature their body's at, because she describes their life cycle is like they can only reproduce under between a range of temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
So their identity of themselves is going to change different, or like how they talk about themselves is going to change depending on the temperature. There was some really interesting stuff here. Let me find it. Okay, here. So she says, Butcher says, do they have a word? Do they have this word, I? And she says, as a matter of fact, they have 3 forms of it. I below a temperature of 6 degrees centigrade, I between 6 and 93 degrees centigrade, and I above 93. And the butcher looked confused. It has to do with their reproductive process, she explained. When the temperature is below 6 degrees, they're sterile. They can only conceive when the temperature is between 6 and 93, but to actually give birth, they need to be above 93. The Cerebian ship moved like floppy feathers across the screen. Yeah, let's see. She asked if they have a home for they have no word for home, house, home, or dwelling. Because she talks about how that humans had to communicate with these race of people,
right?
And it was really difficult because they would use the words like home. We need to defend our families and our home, and they'd be like, "What the fuck is home?" And their language is apparently really okay. For house, you have to end up describing an enclosure that creates a temperature discrepancy with the outside environment of so many degrees, capable of keeping comfortable a creature with the uniform body temperature of 98.6, the same enclosure being able to lower the temperature during the months of the warm season and raise it during the cold season, providing a location where organic sustenance can be refrigerated in order to be preserved or warmed well above the boiling point of water to pamper the taste mechanism of the indigenous inhabitants who, through customs that go back through millions of hot and cold seasons, have habitually sought out this temperature-changing device, and so on and so forth. So that's translating one word, home. And then so they talk about describing a heat plant, like some kind of like plant. And he says one Cerebian can slither through that plant and go describe it to another Cerebian who never saw it before, so he can build an exact duplicate, even to the color the walls are painted.
Right.
And they use 9 words to like describe a whole plant. But then they have no word for home, and it's like described in a giant paragraph. It was kind of interesting.
That's nice.
I liked it.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor for this book. There's a lot of words to describe
poached eggs,
stinky plot.
Well, I mean, but I do think it's an interesting attempt at trying to depict what like a completely other type of life would be. Right, you can't explain it too much.
Right.
Could be
The conceptual differences between languages and cultures, and trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah, or just like to depict what something so radically different would be.
You guys, really quick. Yeah. In the future, we won't do this because it'll be obnoxious, and it already is. But we have 4 watching now, so that means we have Jack and his girlfriend.
What?
And somebody else. One other. I mean, I am also one of those. So we have one other stranger.
Okay,
so,
great.
Hey, Mr. Stranger, if you want to say hi, please do.
Leave us a comment. Tell us to fuck ourselves.
That's perfect.
Tell us how we should fuck ourselves?
Yeah. And in what ways?
I'm sorry. I interrupted again. I'm the audience. I'm over here texting and...
Butt plug.
It's mostly... Yeah.
Let me see. Where were we? All right. So we're kind of coming to the end here, right? She realizes that the butcher speaks Babel-17, and they enter. It was kind of weird. They enter a telepathic union where they can both understand each other's thoughts. And this was I thought it was an interesting ode to literature, right? Is like with literature and like philosophy. I was talking to a friend about this while I was on vacation. You can't really. It's almost like Plato's cave shit, where like if you see something beautiful, you can't really communicate it to someone. This is why we can talk, because we've all read books and we appreciate the kind of beauty that comes with like reading a really good book.
Right.
But like if someone who's not used to seeing that kind of beauty won't understand what you're talking about.
Right.
And there's a part where they talk about how well read Rydra is, and the butcher finally like he has access to like her perspective, right? They have a telepathic union where they completely understand each other. And he's like, he can't handle it. Like all the reading that she's done. He's like, wow, like you see the world in so many different ways that it causes him pain. Thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Not sure how that works. Yeah, their consciousnesses are kind of like fused. And that's when they realized that the butcher was actually the son of, what's his nuts? Baron Dervorko. He's like the primary child. Right. And so he raised Niles. His name's Niles. The Baron raised Niles Dervorko to be stronger than all the other spies, even though there came ones later that were stronger. But he kept all his spies. They can all communicate with each other. And he sent Niles to the invaders, hoping he would just go fuck shit up. But what happened was the invaders captured him, tortured him beyond all. Like they took away his like primary language, I guess somehow, like language he thinks in. They implanted Babel-17 and sent him to the Alliance. And so the last 6 years, all these sabotage attempts have been related to him. He's just been traveling around the galaxy with a network of spies that he eventually controlled through Babel-17, and that's like the reason there's been these sabotage attempts.
Right, and that's why they pick up the radio frequencies or whatever.
Right,
when it happens is because it's them like telepathically.
Yeah.
Communicating in this language.
Yeah, and then so toward the end, they get back to Earth, and the Rydra and the Butcher won't talk. Like they're stuck in that union. They won't talk to anyone else, and everyone's really worried. And so they get the therapist who is in the beginning of the book. They get him to come Maki, yeah. Mm-hmm. They get him to get Rydra and the Butcher out of it. And what they does is he says the consciousness of their brain is limited to their conscious mind is limited to a certain part of the brain, and they need to feed the brain paradoxes, which will somehow it will be painful for them to think in such ways, and it will force consciousness into other areas of the brain so that they can kind of like reclaim their former self or something.
Right.
Not quite sure. But essentially they succeed, right? Like the Butcher, they feed him paradoxes, and the Butcher's face goes apeshit. And then eventually it's like, turn it off, we're all right. And that's basically the big reveal. The Butcher kind of it's actually kind of a tragic moment because he realizes who he is. And I thought it was tragic because he says, like, my name is Niles Derverco and I've killed my father. Like, that's the first thing he realizes is that, like, he's basically a pretty bad dude.
Right. Or he's done bad things. He's not a bad dude.
Right. Sure. Commandeered to do bad things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the very end was very anticlimactic, I thought. Where she was like, I guess I'll write a poem or a novel. I can basically talk myself out of anything.
Right.
Okay. So you just fucking found out that you're sabotaging shit, and you're like, well, whatever, I'll get out of it.
There was something I didn't understand was when she talks about a horrific incident she had with a bird.
That was her discovery of telepathy.
And I didn't realize that till I read it the second time, because it's like Maki, this therapist, took care of her while she was a child, and he taught a bird to say, like, "Good morning, Rydra. I'm happy to see you. It's a wonderful day." Right. And he gives it a worm whenever it says that. And so, her first telepathic experience is the bird tells her hello, it's a nice day, but she sees, like, in her mind's eye, she sees the worm.
She's in the mind of this bird and understands understands the feelings this bird has, and how Delaney created this scenario is that the worm is about like half the length of this little parakeet or whatever that can say this phrase. And so every time it's shown the worm, though it is seen as a reward, the bird feels terrified that it then has to eat something that is like half its size. Is what's created in this book. And so Rydra has her reverse telepathic experience when she comes in and witnesses, she herself feels the fear of having to eat a worm that is like half her own size, and it scares her, and that's how she becomes telepathic. Though she doesn't understand that until, like you said, like the end of this book.
Right. What did you guys think of? Here's something. I'm going to give Eric shit because he was raised without the wisdom of the Lord.
For shame. For shame.
What do you guys think of the title? Why do you think it was called Babel-17?
I think because of a babbling brook.
Well, I think because of Babel, like the Tower of Babel.
Right. So Babel is another word for speech, right? Like you just said, Eric, like babbling brook. Like Babel, it could be a term for speech. But it's also, the Tower of Babel and the confusion of tongues, right? Like humanity was united and tried to they agreed to build a city and a tower tall enough to reach heaven. God observed this and confounds their speech so they can no longer understand each other and scatters them across the world.
Huh. I didn't know that story. That's great.
That is Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9.
Which is our next book that we'll be reading.
Right. Yeah.
The whole Bible, actually.
Old Testament.
That actually might be fun. I don't want to be the guy that says that, but I think that would be fun. That'll
be fun. I don't want to be the guy that says it, but reading the Bible for book club might be fun, guys.
I mean, it might save our souls, so that's pretty heavy.
That's
pretty big. You know what I mean? The Lord is our Savior.
We'll do a 12-part series on the Bible.
Oh, Jesus.
A 12-part series. Again, the more we talk about it, the more the ending, like, it doesn't become clear in my mind, because it does kind of just like come out of nowhere, and it comes at you through a series of like, seems like half-baked ideas.
Yeah.
I don't know, but also no, because like they are fully formed. It does make sense. Like, I didn't read the book totally confounded. You know, I didn't leave it super confused. I understood everything up to that point. It just seemed quick. Like, I think that was like the best one I can explain it, where it did seem like, oh, what a weird series of coincidences that she's like saved by this pirate who happens to have this man named the Butcher.
Oh, that was on purpose. I think the Butcher made later. The Butcher made Tarek. Yeah, because the Butcher controls Tarek. So
Oh.
So maybe
he could recognize the Babel-17 telepathically or something.
Right.
Or like through transmissions or some shit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why they decided to save Rydra and her crew.
I think I really liked the conceptual ideas of the book, a lot about language, but I thought that the action sequences to me were clunky and too fast, and just like I would get just confused like with the physical actions they were doing sometimes, just because it would go so fast.
Well, and
so I think that's where it fell flat for me.
Yeah, he never describes how. I mean, it's kind of like Dune, but it's like in the sense that he just like tells you like, oh, like the Thopter world through the air, but like, and doesn't really describe anything. But it's almost like more difficult because he'll kind of like hint at how it works, but then not really say anything.
Right. It's more disorienting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would use.
That is a fantastic way to describe it. It is
100% with something
disorienting.
Like I was saying early in this podcast, like he would get super like sciencey about with like degree angles and like
trigonometry,
circles, and so that would like pull me into like, oh, okay, he's gonna get really into this big conceptual idea, or I don't know, I just got, and then he would like pull you out and kind of go back to action real quick, and like so it just was kind of like inconsistent for me.
I wonder if it has something to do with us having read and dissected Dune so much, because Dune, like the more I think about it, like you said, he never describes how a Thopter works or really even how it looks, but that doesn't take away from the story. It doesn't.
I feel like I was able to visualize those so much better, like
because I think those are simple. You know what I mean? But like I felt like, and going back to a character that in the beginning of this podcast we described completely as opposed to other characters, which is fine with me, but Brass, this supposed Griffin-like character, there were so many instances where she was interacting with Brass and Brass is interacting with everybody else in a way that I couldn't fully understand what the space was that he was occupying. How big is he? Like what does he even look like? Like he has like a paw, but he also has a hand
and like a big claw.
I could be like, I feel like I could have read this wrong, but I also feel like there was, I'm remembering being taken out at moments because I was unable to grasp what was happening in the physical space that the author had created.
Yeah.
And that can be tough. Like, it's like, I don't quite understand what the fuck's happening, so it's hard for me to engage.
Totally. I just felt like there was such a big world that this story took place in that the little attention he ended up taking to some of the physical things just threw me off. Yeah.
It was fun though, because like and what let me know that it was fun, was how this book ended. The way the book ended let me know that this is like one of our more fun books we've ever read. Like this is like simple.
Like, oh, we solved it. Now we get to go do another adventure.
Right, and also the reappearance of Appleby.
We should discuss that. Yeah,
that's what solidified it for me. I was like, I can't wait to discuss this because I think I even when I was reading, I thought, oh, this is going to be kind of tough because like this isn't too deep. Again, we all picked up on the Superior Wharf theory. It wasn't like it was like a mystery that needed to be cracked, but we all were like, oh, I get it. A little bit of research into what this theory is, see how he uses it, period. And then we get to experience the adventure. And then I fully understood that when we saw Appleby return. And the whole, I think it's the ending of the book in which Appleby, the young do-gooder customs agent, returns to the story, is going down the same red light district, the bad zone, the transport zone, and he goes into a cosmetic surgery office. And essentially it's like what like a tattoo parlor would be. And he walks in and he picks out his cosmetic surgery. He said he's been thinking about it for a while now and he's finally ready to get it. And he gets a rose, right?
Or no, he gets there is someone that has a rose. I think it's Ron.
He gets
I got confused too.
He gets a plant or like a flower.
Yeah, but I think he gets a dragon, like a little mechanical dragon.
He gets a little dragon surgically implanted into his shoulder.
It's difficult to keep, like, because I it took me a long time to read it the first time. I read it in short little bursts.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult because I would forget the characters and forget who had what for cosmetic surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's
Totally.
like Callie just has lights all over his body. I think
Right.
Ron
Yeah,
has
like
the rose.
implanted.
And then yeah, the Daniel Appleby gets a dragon on his shoulder.
He gets a dragon on his shoulder, and he feels like himself for the first time. I think is like the implied, like the idea that he had a short moment with the weirdos that happened to be our main characters that we fell in love with. They reflected on him so much that he finally got the nerve to go and get this cosmetic surgery done, and now he feels better, and that's where the story ends.
Right. Yeah. It's like he feels really innocent in the beginning, right? Like
Yes.
He's like, oh, what the heck? This bar, these customs. What do you mean
Yes.
you have a sexual relationship with two other people?
Exactly.
But then, by the end, I think he takes Maki to the bar. It's his idea. He's like, now he thinks this shit's really cool. He's like, hey.
Maki, the therapist of Rydra.
Right.
Yeah. It's fun.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on 2 hours.
Cool.
Which is probably a pretty good cutoff for us in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we talked a lot about this book. I think
we did too. It was a fun book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess, do we want to do some final thoughts on it? Or
Sure.
Yeah. Can I start just since I'm the one who
has
probably
Speak
the
your
least
piece.
to say? Yeah. Well, I'm fucking lost about the plot. I lost that a little bit ago. But,
I know.
If you read the book, that helps.
That should be the name
Jack,
of our podcast.
Jack is sitting and listening to us. I'd rather just read the whole book.
Well, fuck you, Jack. But I think that the conversation is not lost on me just because there's stuff happening with themes and I don't know. It sounds like a fun book. I'm struck that like this book was more philosophically interesting or like conceptually interesting than it was executed, right? Like it was, I mean, I didn't fucking read it, but it was still pretty short and like it seems like not a lot happened, but there's like some cool sci-fi work insofar as it like expands upon shit that's happening at the time it's being written and then projects it outward and like his anticipation of polyamorous stuff is pretty interesting, right? And that was happening in the 60s anyway with like free love movements and stuff like that, people questioning kind of basic tenets of modern American culture, but still to like put that up and now that's like hip in fucking Silicon Valley or wherever, and his stuff about body modification is also hip. Like that's something that struck me. I watched a series, I think I've maybe talked about on this before, but Altered Carbon on Netflix. I liked it pretty well. But in that, like the characters who were actually aristocratic a lot of times, or even normal people in this world had face tattoos. So that was something that the writers of that show had kind of projected into the future and kind of makes sense to me where like right now, right, like even though tattoos are being more accepted on a general level, face or neck or hand tattoos are still stigmatized.
But you see them more and more.
Right. Well, and then you look at rappers and not even just SoundCloud rappers, but like Post Malone and like,
dude, he's bringing it back. It's like be all the
ASAP Rocky, I think, is tatted up all up his stuff.
Dude, I was just on vacation, staying in a hostel, and this dude.
Congratulations.
Well, no, this.
Oh, you spent Post Malone at a hostel on vacation?
No, you just went on a vacation. Period. You fucker.
Right.
I'm sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
No, but he had tattoos all over his face. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I saw a few other. They're mostly European. The people on this island. But yeah, it was weird just because like he was like a really nice dude, like really respectful. But like when you see someone, you think they're a train hopper.
Right.
right? Because that's the only other time I've seen like big face tattoos.
Like
Seriously,
hand like stick and poke face tats.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen so many of those transient gutter punks around Eugene who just like fucking like hang out downtown
They're
with their dogs and guitars and have
huge
face
hub.
tattoos and like
I want to get some.
it's fun.
Well,
I want to get some transients.
You don't have to pay them that much. You just have to pay for their iPhone bill.
Yeah.
I'm a port to charge their iPads.
But what about the rest of you guys? Do you have other thoughts you haven't touched on? As the audience, I'm interested to hear you recap the book. And so,
like you said, I think it's pretty hip. Like I think he's a pretty hip dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I kind of would like his writing. It seemed kind of disorienting. I would like to read more of him at some point.
Yeah.
He has a book called Dahlgren that's like 1,000
like his
pages.
big one. Yeah.
And it's supposedly like no one knows what the fuck is going on. I think William Gibson, who wrote Neuromancer, said that.
Tight.
Yeah, he said that it's a riddle that's never supposed to be solved.
Neuromancer's the first time that the term like cyberpunk was invented, and like words like the internet and the web were ever used. It's a really neat sci-fi book if everybody gets a chance to read it, if anybody does.
Yeah. It makes me. I have the edition with Empire Star in it, and it's like 90 pages, and I kind of am interested to breeze through it. And
I wonder if it's taken. I wonder if it takes place in the same world. I'd be really curious.
Well, I kind of looked through it, and I saw the name. I saw the name Mules in it.
Oh, old Mules is back.
What were you saying, Coop?
I bought Nova, another one of his little short books, and I think I read about 20 or 30 pages or so of that, and same vein as Babel-17, intergalactic space opera-esque, opera mini
espionage.
Yeah, interesting characters with things that are very futuristic, but too similar in writing to Babel-17. And I must say, again, I don't have anything to fucking back my shit up on. You know what I mean? I am not a literary figure criticizing another person. Like, this man has written a lot of celebrated books. But I found a lot of the time his writing to be disorienting, and I don't feel like it was intentional.
It wasn't sharp.
It just wasn't as sharp. I found myself having to reread sentences, and that really only happens now because of the way that the sentence is written, and it's like I could not grasp what was being said.
Yes, I had a very, very similar experience when I read this book. Yeah.
And
that's why I read it twice. It's one of the reasons I read it twice.
I'd be curious to see. I wish I had read it twice. I think I would have a different opinion on it. Because it was fun. It's a good story. It's exciting. It's like an adventure story with some philosophy, some linguistic relativity, a lot of neat ideas wrapped into a swashbuckling adventure, which I'm never gonna like balk from. That's like my bread and butter. Been reading that shit since I was a little kid. But it wasn't my favorite of the books we've done, but that's not like a big list, and that's not a low list. I still really enjoyed reading this. I will say that. If that's like confusing.
Like we were saying, it took us all all of us that did read it. It took us pretty brief to get through only a few times. You know, it wasn't that hard to set aside a couple days to just read and not do anything else. But
anyways,
not that hard. I mean, it was kind of hard. I mean, it's harder.
But personally, I felt myself like the same as Coop was saying, is kind of disoriented by a lot of the action, and like that combined with the big conceptual ideas, it just didn't make for. It kind of made a tedious read for how short it was. Not like I could read through it fast, but like just like getting to the whole like reveal and it being kind of anticlimactic.
See, that's the thing. It's like with Dune starts off, and like you said, the first 100 pages are so disorienting because it's basically kind of like this. There's all these terms thrown around and all these different like groups of people, and you're like, oh, what the fuck, what's going on? He doesn't. But over time, because the book's so damn big, you do get kind of. It's almost like a giant painting with a lot of different stuff. Like you eventually do get to kind of make sense of all these terms that he's throwing around, and I feel like this is just too short.
Right.
Like like that's almost. I don't want to say this is my final thought, but one thing I wanted to say as a final thought was that after reading this the second time, it was still disorienting, and I wanted more. I wanted to I wish there were more of this world. I want to understand more about why things are the way they are. He does a little bit talk about the background, just a little bit, right? But yeah, I feel like if it was part of something bigger, where you got more of a full story,
that's what I was most frustrated about. Too,
well, Dan, that's just something that struck me in general, is that like you having read it twice are still disoriented. Because there were times where, like, as a initial reader, even, you know, who's like a lazy fucking reader, I was like, oh, wait, what's going on here? And when they started talking about what was happening with the ship, for example, in some of the earlier scenes, when they were using really technical stuff, and I was wondering if, like, you had a bigger context, you would be able to figure out what was going on.
Dude, I'll tell you.
But there was still just some stuff that was kind of out, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that's 100% correct. Like, there's a really technical section when she figures out the circle problem.
Yeah,
that's the first sabotage. The second time I read it, I basically skipped it. I was like, I don't want to spend the mental energy thinking about this.
Right.
I really don't.
Totally.
But yeah, after reading a second time, I really, especially, you're right about the ship. Anything about the ship, it seemed like I couldn't really make heads or tails of it.
Just like the descriptions and everything, they were just so muddled. Like I wasn't sure exactly what I was supposed to be picturing.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's a very good trick. I had no idea what to think of, how to picture these things.
Yeah. Which I guess we can say, if this is a book that's entirely written around an idea in which language creates the thoughts we're capable of having.
Totally.
He succeeded if he wanted to make us oftentimes muddled and unable to form complete thoughts or images about what he was putting forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Is that a thing? Or I don't know. But
no, absolutely.
I 100% agree with you guys. There was quite a few times, and especially with the ship and whatnot, like we've already pointed out, I just truly could not. And I mean, I read that way. I do like have visuals. I do picture what's happening in a way that I don't even know if I can even begin to understand. You know, we those who read get you picture or try to picture what's happening, and a lot of times in this book, I couldn't. I just like truly could not.
I could with the characters. The characters were interesting.
Like when they were having like direct dialogue and stuff.
Mm-hmm. There's a question about if that is a
intentional.
And I think that's a real issue. You know, like if he's trying to push stuff to the point where we have fucking ghosts that we're working with,
right?
Right. They're smelling stuff in order to figure out where the fuck to drive the ship. Like this is already so far outside of the framework.
Right.
Like, the mechanics of that stuff, I didn't really worry about it that much. I was still just like, oh shit, like I guess the ghost is just smelling shit and like steering the ship with the captain who wrestles really good. You know, like okay, like this kind of works. So I don't know, like on a real like basic level, part of me was like, okay, this is unclear, but okay, I'm also down with just like these ghosts having a fucking threesome while they drive a ship. You know, that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
it's like
while they drive it.
Some G-funk.
I am going to give him
right there.
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that
Definitely.
I think everything was deliberate in this. I really do. I mean, he's a well-read dude.
So that might tip the scales a little bit, right? Like maybe he's trying to do some out shit. Like I'm not actually. I wish I did more digging on this because I probably would fucking like a lot of the Afro stuff. But something that was really hip, I think maybe around this time was like Afrofuturism, and I just know about this because there's a This American Life about it. I think.
Yeah, it's a powerful idea that's like kind of taking resurgence right now in a lot of books and stuff like that.
Right, with what's his name? Black Panther. Yeah, that was dope, and that was like having to do with New Africa shit and like
Wakanda Forever.
Wakanda Forever. But this has some of that, right? Like,
yeah. Well, again, like the redeeming thing for me is the main character. Rydra Wong really is what kept me glued to the story. I do think that he put his bet, like Delaney put his best into this character. I, you know, she's intentionally supposed to be a little shrouded in mystery, supposed to be a little reserved, a little antisocial, but still, I was with her. I was fucking kicking ass, like right beside her. She was a great, intelligent character.
Right.
Who figured the mystery out, and like I don't know, it was yeah, exactly, like a boss.
Oh shit! Hold on, guys. Hold on. Give me a second here.
Wait, I think we have another viewer.
Oh, dude, can I give my final
Mike
thoughts?
Pence?
My phone's on.
It's Mike Pence.
My phone
Mike.
is on. My phone
Have
is
a
on
drink.
2%.
Can you plug in?
My final thoughts. Just
plug in. Plug in.
No, I can't. I got the iPhone 8, and I have to plug in my headphones.
Okay, Dan, we'll get your final thoughts, and we got to wrap up anyway. I also just want to give a shout out to JC, who is watching also. Hi, JC.
What up?
Thanks, JC.
Thanks for your support. Visit our Patreon.
Yeah.
Visit our Patreon, waste-division.org.
So my final thoughts. I have pretty nuanced thoughts about this one. I guess like you guys, it's not my favorite that we've done. But I'm not ashamed that I recommended it. Like, I don't think it was a bad idea.
No.
No, not at all.
Yeah, it would have been, I wish I would have been more in the Sapir Wharf stuff in there. And I wish it was longer. Because at the end of reading it 2 times, I'll say again, I just wish I knew more about this world.
Yeah, I would have taken
the characters are sweet. I thought the characters, and Rydra, like you said, Coop, I think this is really, she's a real special character. You don't really get characters like this in a lot of other sci-fi novels, at least that I've read.
Totally.
And it's nice getting a it's in a world or in a time where it's mostly like very aggressive, strong male protagonists. It's nice to get a Rydra Wong, like a very sensitive woman. I
totally
guess.
Totally agree.
Yeah. All right, man.
Also, wait. Oh,
yes?
You got it, Dan. Just
No, I'm finished.
I mean, as long as you're still with us and you're not dead.
R.I.P.
I think it's interesting that he projected into the future that a poet would be so important. Like, especially now with kind of the death of the printed word, or at least on paper, right? A lot of people think that like literature shit is like
shit. Guys, hold on. I can hold on.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. I just thought that was cool, and it's kind of weird because like today I just think that anybody who works in words that is large is a rapper, right? So in that sense, we have poets now who have large followings that are international, and but it's not like a poet, like somebody who puts out a fucking poetry collection is an international star, really.
I know that is a difficult thing to conceptualize. I mean, the idea that in every tavern, to every fucking like fancy ass bar on a huge skyscraper, everybody's talking about the same poet and about their poetry and how it affected them. That is so far from our
and
grasp.
Also like across like 8 alien races.
I mean, yes,
like,
I mean that alone is like unfathomable. But like nobody's talking about that Honey and Milk poetry book that came out, and I see in Barnes and Noble all the time.
What book?
I don't go. I just saw Honey and Milk. I don't know. I see that all the time in Barnes and Noble. Shout out if you know who wrote that.
I don't even know what that is. So.
I just spent a lot of time in Barnes and Noble by myself.
Oh, cool. That's okay.
That's the only free time I can get. I know I should.
Oh, sorry. Edit that.
I need friends.
We're having a Daniel.
Shout out, I need friends.
Shut up.
I need friends.
Cooper, what's your email? eekbencooper@gmail.com. Send him a love note, something nice. Or you can leave us a review on iTunes or Podbean or your preferred podcast platform.
Yeah, leave us a 5-star
basically-
review and then fucking shit on us. And
Yeah,
review.
Basically, the consensus.
Give us, as long as we just have reviews, it's fine. I think
Give
it's
us a
just,
5-star and just let us know how shitty we all are.
give us the noise. Waste books. What's up?
Hashtag what up?
We don't read books.
That's the biggest secret of this podcast. We've actually none of us have ever read a single book ever.
Is Dan gone? Dan, are you
It's
gone?
It's just his little like blank avatar now. That is
Oh.
Dan.
Oh shit.
I feel like I'll give him my final thought.
Yeah, I'll give my
Turk,
final
why don't
thought.
you give us a little bit? We'll see if Dan can come and say goodbye to everyone.
Yeah, my final thoughts is I thought I liked the conceptual ideas about language and like the formation of language and like the physical aspects of language. Oh, by Dan. And I just think like we've talked the clunkiness and the action and the disorienting. For me, just didn't do it for me. And I think after reading such a big, expansive novel like Dune, that I felt a little underwhelmed. And not that the writing was bad or anything. I just felt underwhelmed with the story itself. And
yeah,
but I enjoyed that. I got to like read a different type of sci-fi than the one that we've just done. A little more technical in the writing aspect, and yeah, I thought it was a enjoyable read. But I probably wouldn't read it again, honestly.
Phil, you've given your final thoughts.
Yeah, man. I think we're. I love the book I didn't read. No, it was fun to hear you guys talk about it. And like I said, I think a lot of the work in this book was just the philosophical ideas and kind of concepts. And that was something that he kind of laid out in the first, I don't know. I mean, you guys could speak to this much better than I could, but like first 100 pages, right? Like once you kind of got the hang of the games, it could be like, oh, that's like kind of a cool idea. And then that was enough for me to be like, oh, I could see that sci-fi. And I don't know, maybe that combined with the obscurity of the plot and like what exactly was happening. And
hello.
Oh, Dan made it back.
Here you
go. Oh, Dan, for the ending.
All right, yeah. My audio's done, but that's fine. We're live. Fuck it.
Well, we're just wrapping up. I'm just giving my final thoughts. I liked it philosophically. I'm a sucker for language philosophy, so just having like the seeds of that in the first parts of the book were cool for me to read about.
Wait, Dan, you mean your audio is done? Like you're not recording right now?
Your headphones? Oh, that's all right.
That's all right.
Let's just say goodbye.
All right. Well, it was good, guys. Good to see you.
Yeah,
we'll see you soon.
Let's just end the podcast recording.
Everybody end it.
All right. Bye.
Actually, yeah, don't jump off the thing. We're gonna talk.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
Fuck it.
Fuck it.
All right. I am getting to the